Yeah, it was obviously a a unique scenario that popped up at the game on Saturday. I think to make it clear with kind of what was going on, behind closed doors, there's a lot of things at play. There's obviously the safety of the players, which is first and foremost the most important thing. But it got to the point where basically the we can't stay overnight to play the game. We don't have the finances to do that. Plus, we got a game the following week, and we got to fly back, and just we don't have the finances to do something like that. And then Mercer only has to drive home. And what I was told was, if the game was under 5 minutes, then we would have won. Or if we were up by 2 scores, we would have won. But because it was a 6-point game and there was 7 minutes left, that there had to be a decision on if we were going to play. We had decided that we were going to keep playing the game. We had talked about a cutoff point. We had called our pilots for our flight. They were willing to push back a few hours. So we were going to wait there till 12:30, 1 a.m. to see what was going on. And then the city of Montgomery decided to call the game, basically saying that looking at the weather, and they didn't want the game to be played past a certain hour, and so it was kind of out of our hands at that point. So, you want to be able to have a result at the end of a game. I felt like we were clearly the better team in the game, so it would have been nice to come out with a victory there. But at the same time, whether you lose or win the game, you have a result that you can teach off of. Without that result, you're hoping to be able to teach your team on the things we did well and the things we did poorly. And there's a lot of things to learn from in that game that will help us. We knew we were taking a huge risk with the travel and the humidity and, all that. But the opportunity to get the team on national television and all that. And so how that affects later in the year with rankings, that will only matter if we handle our business in the other games anyway. So I'm not too worried about that. But thought the guys played hard. There were some really good moments on all 3 phases and things we got to get better at. And so we'll detach from that and try to improve our process this week before we go play another tough road game on Saturday. We couldn't wait it out forever because eventually the pilots, they're under contractual. You can't have them fly at certain times, So we had called them, and they were willing to start their clock at 1 a.m., which would have meant that we would have needed to get to the airport, shortly after that. So we were basically, it was 10:30, I think, and we were communicating that we were ready to stay till 1 a.m., and play the game. And then shortly after that is when Montgomery called the game. Yeah, I thought that actually right when it happened, glass half full, I was like, felt really confident we were going to win the game. The only thing that was really hurting us at that point was we were, the hydration and the humidity had gotten to our team. In the third quarter, our entire receiver core was basically out for the entire third quarter because of having to go to get IVs and cramping, and we lost a lot of D linemen to that. And so, the fatigue had set in for sure in the travel and the humidity. The opportunity to sit in the locker room and rehydrate and get our bearings, I thought was going to really help us. So basically we were just talking through the situation our defense was in at that point. I think it was like first down or second down on the plus side of the field, and just talking through what we were going to see defensively, and then kind of the adjustments we were going to make offensively now that we had all of our skill guys back. And we had a bunch of plays we had kind of saved, and so we were kind of going through all those and fixing our field goal unit, giving up a blocked kick, knowing that we might need a field goal to either win the game or whatever. Just talking through all those things, and met with the leadership council players, kind of let them know kind of what we were doing. And but the rule is once there's lightning within 8 miles, it starts a 30-minute countdown. And so it was so frequent at that point that they kept restarting the 30 minutes. So you knew it was going to be a few hours. There's no NCAA rules for the length of game. It really comes down to the teams, right? There's there's kind of options they give both sides. Obviously, Mercer had gotten some momentum. They were within a score. They're on the plus side of the 50. They're feeling like they're going to win the game. Obviously, we feel like, hey, we're in control here. We're in the lead. We feel like we're going to win the game. Neither team wants to not play the game. They have an advantage because they can just drive home, so they can be there all day. And we don't have the finances to pay for another night of a hotel and postpone the flights, and so there's a little bit of an advantage on their end, I guess, on that. But ultimately, it was the city of Montgomery that called the game. We prepared for it all week, just because the knowledge I have of the South is my sister has lived there for 25, 30 years. So I've been back there enough to know that weather back there can change pretty dramatically. And it had been some lightning during the week, so Matt Kitchen and Josh Fleshman had started working on, so we were prepared. We had extra food ready. We had, that was impressive. Like, right, we got in the locker room, we had all this stuff prepared for it. Like, we had already planned for this possibly to happen. So I was really proud of our staff for all that stuff. But during the game, actually, Matt Kitchen had told me, I don't know, maybe 2 drives before that there was going to be a delay in his opinion. It had popped up, and he was checking on his phone, and then right after that is when the refs called it. So I actually patted him on the back and said, "Good job, buddy." He knew it was coming before the refs did. So we ate a lot. Yep, we ate. We hydrated. Gave some guys IVs, and then rested. We were gonna, depending on how long the wait was, we would have had like a certain amount of warm up when we came out, but the longer we were in there, the better we were feeling. We were like, man, if we go back out here, it'll be like the start of the game again, and we'll get after them. But they don't give you that in the head coach handbook, So I think the bummer is, obviously, we only play 11 games now. The rest of the year, everybody else plays 12, and you have to hope that enough people were watching that game on TV to remember that at the end of the year, that maybe it's not on the record book, but it did happen. Like, if you used your eyes, you saw it. And obviously, we were the team that traveled, thousands of miles to play on the road against a good team, and we're in control of the game most of the game. So hopefully people remember that if we're able to play well enough to even make it a question at the end of the game. Yeah, that came up. We looked at the schedules. It just didn't work, like bye weeks versus non-bye weeks, and when you could get the travel of both teams to make sense. It just didn't line up. Yeah, like we didn't know when we could get their bye week and it just didn't match up. Yeah, we called them. They just did a good job. They stayed on top of the routes. Their secondary was really athletic. I want to say in the first half we probably called 6 or 7 deep throws, and we had one that they blew, and it was open. It would have been an 80-yard touchdown, and Caden just missed it. He didn't see it, which young guys do sometimes. He checked the one down. I know he threw a pick on one. They got pressure on him. He checked one down to Mateo on another time. So we hit Vargas on the one. So we took our shots. They just did a good job of defending them, and they're a good defense, man. They obviously recovered in the second half and made some things difficult on us. Their front is physical. Man, their one linebacker, number 48, was an electric player. That guy was awesome. And he was a new player. We didn't even know who he was. He shows up and he's running around like a deer. So he was impressive. So, I think they're talented at all 3 levels. They did a good job staying on top of the routes. And I think again, the third quarter is kind of a wash because we lost all 3 guys to cramping at that point. So we were kind of just trying to get through that quarter. Yeah, they were disappointed. We went all that way. They wanted a statement win there to start the year. That's a really good team. You choose to go to Alabama to play them. Showing that you're not scared to play anybody. I think they really wanted to get a win like that just to start the year off the right way. So I think they were bummed, but I think they also, we train these guys pretty year-round to detach from the results and focus on the process. So I think pretty quickly you could tell they were like, well, hey, we played well. There's things we didn't do well that we can get better at, and luckily we got 11 more games to do that. But yeah, I think initially they were bummed. They wanted to play. but I think quickly they, rallied and ready to go. Yeah, I think at one point I called in the leadership group, hey guys, this is what's going on. What are you thinking? I think the two things I got back was like, we really want to play, but coach, we love you, whatever you want to do. Like, we're fine. Like, we know we played well. We feel like we're the better team. We want to prove it and finish it, but we also, if it gets to be too much, we get it. So I think just their maturity to it makes you really love coaching them, and loves, it's the part you love about being at Davis. They're just good dudes, and I just think like, if you think about from our standpoint, we left on Thursday. These guys have had a long day. You're waiting in the locker room for possibly 3, 4, 5 hours. Now you're playing a contact physical sport at 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. At what point does this become like too much for these guys? I think there's a lot of unknowns there, and I know I was telling my wife after the game, like, you're in that situation as a head coach, it's a lot different than when you're a position coach,
Yep.
She always reminds me we have 113 sons. We don't just have 3. So it's like, I love all these guys a lot. I don't want to put them in a position just because I want to win a football game, So there was a lot of that going on in my head too. I just felt like we were the ones with a lot of risk there because of the traveling, and then now we got to play another game on the road. I mean, this game this week's at 8 o'clock also, so we're not getting back this week till 2 a.m. on Sunday, and then we play the third game's at 8 o'clock also. We're not getting back till 2 a.m. on that day. I mean, so at some point, when does this become too much for these guys? And again, I think, hindsight's 20/20. We don't know when the game times are going to be, but if I would have known all 3 games were going to be 8 p.m. kickoffs, maybe we wouldn't have scheduled it. There's a lot of stuff going on when you're thinking about it. They're not going to get back and lift till right about now. So I know Jeff's going to kind of give me a report on where they're at, and we'll kind of look at how we set up the practices the next few days based on some of the GPS numbers we get back. So, but these guys are, they're Aggies. They'll be ready to go. I think he did exactly what I expected him to do, both good and bad, right? Like, I expected him to do 5 to 10 things that would make everybody watching go, oh my God, this guy's amazing, because he is. And then I expected him to play like a freshman and miss some things and make some mistakes, which he did. So I told him before the game that it's still football, and he can pretend like he's at Del Oro playing against Folsom or something. You know what I mean? Like, just go out there and play ball and don't overthink it. But I think he's going to learn things as the year goes. Took way too many hits, and he's got to learn to get down and protect himself, live to fight another down, because those things wear on you. I think that contributed to his lack of accuracy in the second half. I think was just take a lot of hits, man. It starts to wear on you. So, but he learned a lot of things, and also showed what he's capable of. His teammates, I think, saw what kind of competitor he is. All those things are great for him. I'm excited for him that people got to see what we've been seeing for the last year and a half, which he's very talented, cares a lot, and he'll be a very good player. I hope they feel weight and expectations just because they play football here. I hope they don't feel it because they're trying to replace another player. I want there to be high expectations at Davis. I want us to be expected to go to the playoffs. I want us to be expected to win championships, and I want them to feel that every day. Whether or not they're replacing another good player, they shouldn't worry about that. I hope that they just want to leave their own mark on the program when they're done, and I think some of the guys you mentioned will have their opportunity to do that. They're so talented that if they stick to the process and keep getting better and do their part of being a good teammate, that they can be as good as those guys, if not better. I think the fronts really both did a great job. That's a team that gave up 50, 60 yards rushing per game last year. We ran for 200 yards, so I thought we really controlled the line of scrimmage in the run game really well. I thought the physicality on the edge, specifically Eli Simonson, was terrific in the game. And then Fisher and Carter and Mateo all had really good moments running the football. And then defensively, man, I thought the thing that stood out to me was our ability to get pressure with a 4-man rush, which has been something we've really talked about as a staff that we want to improve. And Trent, Durrell, Goligowski, Syke. You just saw a bunch of guys getting after the quarterback consistently on passing downs. And if we can do that, man, we're really tough on defense. I thought the first half was the best defensive performance since I've been the head coach here. Just like watching those guys fly around, the physicality they played with, their attention to detail, their communication. It was fun to watch. Those guys are a good group, and if they can stay focused and sustain that for 4 quarters against a good team like that, that was impressive. So I think there's some real bright spots there on both fronts that are exciting. I actually would say that's more of a coaching error on our part. We talk to the staff just about situational football and making sure we're teaching our guys the right things. I mean, the first one is 3rd and 30, and they run a screen and go, and our guys are biting. Why on earth are we biting on a double move on 3rd and 30, and now we're in chase mode, and whether or not it's a PI, you put yourself in that position, the ref could call it. The other one's 2nd and 22, and we press the field corner, and so now Ty's pressed with a 50-50 ball, and there's no reason for us to put those guys in that situation. So I think it's a combination like us. Again, we got a bunch of new guys playing. Our ability as a staff to communicate the situation to them and teach them that, and within what we put them in, making sure we're putting them in a situation to be successful. But I'm never really going to fault DBs on PIs just like O-linemen on holdings. I mean, they happen every play. So I don't want them calling them against us either. So if they call them, and then we'll come back and rally. Yeah, we had some real protection breakdowns on the interior, which was a bummer. Obviously, in hindsight, that cost us the win there with the delay. If we make those field goals, it's probably over. So I know the first one, Hunter just missed it, and that's going to happen. And then the second one was a protection breakdown. But we had some leakage down the middle throughout the game on the field goal team. So that's something we've talked about as a staff that we got to get fixed. A couple of those, they made contact with the long snapper, which is illegal. So we got to make sure we're doing a good job communicating that to the refs and everything beforehand. So that'll be something that we talk about throughout the year. He put his hands on the back of Joe and then pushed Joe onto his back. And you're not allowed to make contact with the long snapper. And again, those are calls that sometimes happen, sometimes don't. Our guards in that scenario did a really poor job of staying flat. They gave too much of an angle for the interior push. So even on the other plays where they touched Joe, we were flatter, and so now they're like crawling through the A gap instead of like leaping through an open gap. And on the block, they leaped through and got a clean look at it. And so those are things we gotta improve. I thought last year was a great example. I think their head coach is a great coach. Their teams are extremely disciplined, play really hard. Been doing that even when he was at Stanford and we were coaching against him. They got an advantage, obviously, because we don't have any film on them from this year, so any adjustments they've made, we have no idea if they're going to do that. And they got some film on us, so a little bit of an advantage on their side for sure. But, I expect a really well-coached team. They're going to be good at the fundamentals. Last year, it was like pulling teeth, moving the ball and scoring against those guys. So we know they're going to be super disciplined and play great defense, and offensively they're going to be really physical. And they got some, like I said, we don't know who they're going to play at quarterback. I mean, there's a lot of things they have to their advantage. And so I think for us, it's focusing on us, making sure we fix the things that we didn't do well, especially in the second half, make sure we correct those things so that we play our best. And hopefully our best is good enough to compete with those guys. Yeah, we're going to look at just kind of the numbers we get back from today. We always have a tracking on GPS, and then through the lifts, we do some different things that'll study the guys and their explosiveness. And if that comes back a little wonky, then we'll have to look at Tuesday, Wednesday, and how to change that. If it comes back normal, then we'll be able to keep it the same. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that the guys got enough rest. We basically gave them yesterday off, and then they had all the way till really 1 o'clock before they lifted today. So hopefully they've had enough time to sleep and get some food and be ready to go.